Hey, I'm William. I'm 71 years old, and I'm going to tell you about the biggest mistake of my life. Not a mistake I made in a moment, not a bad decision on a particular day. A mistake I made every single day for 40 years. And by the time I realized what I'd done, it was too late to fix it. I have three children. David is 46, Sarah is 43, Michael is 39. Beautiful, successful adults with lives of their own. And do you know how many times they visited me in the last year? Twice. Once at Christmas, because their mother insisted. Once in July, because they needed me to sign some papers. That's it. 2 visits in 12 months. And I have no one to blame but myself. Let me take you back to when David was born. 1978. I was 25 years old, working at a manufacturing plant, making barely enough to cover rent on our tiny apartment. I held my son for the first time, and I made him a promise. I said, "You're going to have everything I never had. You're going to have opportunities, security, a better life." And I meant it with every fiber of my being. I grew up poor, really poor. The kind of poor where you wear shoes until they fall apart, and then you tape them together and keep wearing them. Where dinner is whatever's cheapest at the store, and sometimes there isn't dinner at all. I watched my father work himself into an early grave, and we still lost our house. I was 14 when we moved into a motel room, all five of us in one room for 8 months. I swore my children would never know that kind of fear, that kind of shame. So I worked. God, did I work. I took every overtime shift they offered, worked weekends, worked holidays. When David was 3, I got a second job doing night security at an office building. I'd leave for the plant at 6 in the morning, come home at 5, eat dinner standing up, and leave again at 7 for the security job. Get home at 3 in the morning, sleep for a few hours, do it all again. My wife, Linda, she'd ask me to stay home sometimes. "David needs you," she'd say. "I need you." And I'd think, but not say. What he needs is food. What he needs is clothes that aren't hand-me-downs. What he needs is a father who can provide. I thought I was being noble, sacrificing myself so my family could have more. That's what fathers do, right? They work hard. They provide. They make sure their children don't go without. When Sarah was born, I doubled down. 2 kids meant more expenses, more pressure, more need to work. I missed her first steps because I was working a double shift. Linda called me, crying with happiness, and I felt this surge of guilt that I pushed down immediately. I'll make it up to her, I told myself, when I've saved enough, when we're more stable, when things aren't so tight. But things were always tight, because every time I made more money, our life expanded to match it. We moved to a better apartment, then a house, then a bigger house. The kids needed school supplies, sports equipment, college funds. There was always something, always a reason to work more, earn more, provide more. Michael came along when Sarah was 4. 3 kids. The pressure multiplied. I got promoted at the plant. More responsibility, better pay, longer hours. I took it without hesitation. This is what success looks like, I told myself. This is me being a good father, climbing the ladder, making more money so my children can have the life I never did. I missed birthdays, not because I forgot, but because I was working. I missed school plays, soccer games, parent-teacher conferences. Linda went to all of them alone, and she'd tell me about them later, and I'd feel that guilt again. But I'd look at our comfortable house, at my children in their nice clothes, at the food in our refrigerator, and I'd think, this is the trade-off. This is what matters. They have security. They have opportunity. That's what a father provides. When David was 12, he built a treehouse in our backyard, spent 3 weeks on it, working every afternoon after school. He came to me one Saturday morning, so excited, and asked if I wanted to see it. I was exhausted. I'd worked 62 hours that week. I told him maybe later. I needed to sleep. He said okay. His face fell, but he said okay. I never went to see that treehouse. Not once. He stopped asking me to look at things he built. He stopped asking me to do things with him at all. And I told myself it was normal. Teenagers pull away from their parents. That's just what happens. I didn't realize he'd pulled away because I'd never been there to pull away from. Sarah wanted to learn piano. She asked me for months if we could get a piano, if I could teach her since I'd played when I was young. I kept saying we couldn't afford it right now, maybe next year. But the truth? We could afford it. I was making good money by then. I just couldn't afford the time. If we got a piano, she'd expect me to teach her. She'd expect me to sit with her and practice. I didn't have that time. I was working. So we never got the piano. She gave up asking. Michael was quieter than the other two. He'd draw these incredible pictures and leave them on my desk for me to find. Detailed sketches of superheroes, landscapes, portraits. I'd glance at them and tell him they were great, and that was it. I never asked him about them. Never sat down and asked him to explain his process, what he was thinking when he drew them. He needed 5 minutes of my attention, and I couldn't give him that. I was too tired, too busy thinking about work, too focused on earning the money that I thought equaled love. The years blurred together. Work, sleep, work, sleep. The kids got older. They got into good schools. I made sure of that. I wrote the tuition checks, paid for everything they needed. And I thought that was enough. I thought that was what being a father meant. Financial provision, security, making sure they never worried about money the way I did. David went to college, then Sarah, then Michael. I paid for all of it, tens of thousands of dollars. I was proud. Look what I'd done. Look what I'd provided. My children were getting educations I could never have dreamed of. They'd have careers, opportunities, lives so much better than mine. I'd fulfilled my promise to that newborn baby 43 years ago. He had everything I never had. Except he didn't have me. None of them did. And I didn't realize that until it was too late. Linda got sick when I was 63. Ovarian cancer. Stage 4 by the time they found it. She had 8 months. And during those 8 months, do you know who took care of her? The kids. They organized schedules, took shifts, made sure she was never alone. They were there every day. They held her hand. They talked to her for hours. They were present in a way I'd never been present for them. And you know who she asked for in those final weeks? Not me. Her sister, her friends, her children. People who'd actually been in her life, not just financially supporting it from a distance. When she died, I realized I'd been married to her for 43 years, and I barely knew her. I'd worked so hard to provide for her that I'd forgotten to actually be with her. The funeral was packed, hundreds of people, and person after person told stories about Linda, her kindness, her humor, the way she'd helped them through hard times. I stood there listening, and I realized these people knew my wife better than I did. They'd had time with her. I'd had 43 years, and I'd wasted most of it working so we could have a nicer house, better cars, more things. After Linda died, I thought the kids would be around more. I thought we'd get closer now that it was just us. But the opposite happened. They came by less and less. They were polite, dutiful, but distant, like I was an obligation, not a relationship. I retired at 65. Suddenly I had all this time I'd been chasing my entire life, time I'd told myself I'd have later to spend with family. And you know what I discovered? You can't bank time. You can't save it up and spend it when it's convenient. Time doesn't work like money. When it's gone, it's gone. I started calling the kids more, suggesting we get together. They were always busy. Work, kids' activities, friends' events. The same excuses I'd given them for 40 years now reflected back at me. I'd tell them about things I wanted to do, trips we could take, projects we could work on together, and they'd say, maybe, or we'll see, or I'll check my schedule. The same words I'd used on them when they were children, asking for my time. 2 years ago, I had a mild stroke. Nothing catastrophic, but scary. I called David. He came by the hospital for 30 minutes, made sure I was okay, and left. He had a work thing he couldn't miss. Sarah sent flowers. Michael texted to say he was glad I was all right, but he was out of town. 3 children, and I went through a medical crisis, essentially alone. That's when it hit me. The full weight of what I'd done. I'd spent 40 years earning money to give my children everything I never had, and they took it. The education, the opportunities, the comfortable childhood. They took all of it. But I never gave them the one thing that actually mattered. Me. My time. My presence. My attention. My relationship. So now they don't give it to me either. How could they? I never modeled it. I never showed them that relationships matter more than money. I taught them, through my actions every single day, that work comes first, that earning money is more important than being present, that providing financially is the only thing that matters. And they learned the lesson perfectly. They're successful. all three of them. Good jobs, nice houses. They're providing well for their own families, just like I taught them. But they're repeating my mistake. They're working constantly. And their children, my grandchildren, I barely know them either. I see them twice a year, and they're polite to me, but I'm essentially a stranger who happens to share their DNA. 3 generations of misconnections. 3 generations of choosing work over relationships. I have money now. I saved well, invested carefully. I'm financially comfortable in my retirement. I can afford anything I need. And you know what? It means nothing. Absolutely nothing. Because I can't buy back time. I can't purchase a relationship with my children. I can't pay for memories I never made. Last year, I tried to plan a family vacation. Offered to pay for everything. A week together, somewhere nice. I thought maybe if we spent time together, we could start building something. David said his work schedule wouldn't allow it. Sarah said her kids had camp. Michael said he'd think about it and never mentioned it again. The vacation never happened. I sit in this house, the house I worked so hard to afford, and it's empty. So quiet I can hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen. I have money in the bank, a pension, investments, Social Security. I'm financially secure, and I'm completely, utterly alone. The worst part? I don't even blame them. How can I? I trained them to live this way. When they were young and wanted my time, I was too busy earning money. Now I'm old and want their time, and they're too busy earning money. It's perfect, brutal symmetry. I look at old photographs sometimes. Pictures of the kids when they were little. David's gap-toothed smile at 7. Sarah covered in mud after playing in the backyard. Michael's intense concentration drawing at the kitchen table. And I want to reach into those photographs and shake my younger self. Tell him, put down the overtime. Skip the extra shift. Forget the bigger house. Your son built a tree house. Go see it. Your daughter wants piano lessons. Teach her. Your son drew you a picture. Talk to him about it. They're right here, right now, and they won't be forever. But I can't go back. None of us can. Time only moves in one direction, and all the money in the world can't change that. I'm telling you this because I see young parents everywhere making the same mistake I made, working constantly, justifying it by saying they're providing for their families. And they are. But they're also missing their children's lives. They're sacrificing relationships for resources. They're making the same trade I made, and they don't realize yet how bad the deal is. Your children don't need the biggest house or the newest toys or the most expensive colleges. What they need is you, your time, your attention, your presence in their lives. Not your money, you, the actual human being, the parent who shows up, who listens, who's there for the boring everyday moments that actually build relationships. And I'm telling you this because I see older people, people my age, who are confused and hurt that their adult children don't come around much. They say things like, after everything I did for them, or I gave them everything. And they did, except the thing that actually mattered. Time is the only real money. It's the only currency that actually matters. And unlike real money, you can't earn more of it. You can't save it. You can't invest it and watch it grow. You just get what you get, and you spend it. And when it's gone, you're done. I'm 71 years old. If I'm lucky, maybe I've got another decade. And I will spend it financially comfortable and emotionally bankrupt. That's my legacy. That's what I built with 40 years of hard work. Money I can't spend on what matters, and relationships I can't repair. Don't make my mistake. Don't trade time for money and convince yourself it's noble. Don't miss your children's lives because you're too busy providing for them. Don't wake up at 71 and realize you worked so hard to give them everything that you never gave them anything that actually mattered. I spent my whole life thinking money was the answer. Now I'd give every dollar I have for just one more day when my children were young. One more day to see David's treehouse, to teach Sarah piano, to really look at Michael's drawings. One more day to choose them over work. But I can't buy that. No amount of money can purchase time that's already gone. If this story scares you, good. Let it scare you into making different choices. Share it with someone who's working too much, and subscribe if you want to hear more honest stories from people who learned these lessons too late.